Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of the Low Code Café, episode 30. I see a few new faces here, so allow me to introduce myself. I am Bogdan. I am the CEO of Planton App, and together with my team, we are doing this webinar every week. And it's an event where we bring in the team, but also the community to discuss updates on our end in the product, new techniques of developing low-code applications, as well as building systems. So we have the largest chunk of this webinar. It's actually hands-on low coding. This webinar is recorded. So if you are new, probably maybe 50% will not make sense right away. But I invite you to visit our YouTube channel and look back at previous episodes, and everything will tie together. So as I mentioned, we usually have a very consistent agenda. It's usually we start with the product updates, and I will invite our head of product in a few. We have some lessons that we learn from our support channels, and Dale, our head of support, will give us some nice techniques to use. And then finally, the largest chunk, as I mentioned, we have Radu, that's our lead low-code engineer, giving us the hands-on part. There are multiple ways to engage with us, so I encourage you to use the chat window, the Q&A window, whatever means you have at your disposal. So thank you all for being here, and without further ado, I invite Reza, our head of product, to give us some highlights of what's coming.
Hey everyone, thanks Bogdan. If you give me the share back, I think you did, great. Going to just do a very quick 60-second update. I gave a pretty detailed one last week, and so going to start staggering those a little bit so that it's not redundant. Just going to give an update on release 112, which is our current release we're working on. We are extending out a little bit further into next week for the release candidate. Was aiming to have that for like Monday of next week. I think it'll come towards the end of the week. So if anyone wants to help test or is waiting for some fixes or new features sort of thing, let us know and we can make that available next week. Otherwise, probably on the 24th, 2 weeks from today, we'll have the stable pushed out. And the key kind of features or themes that we're rolling out, a lot of really great work done on workflows. I feel like it's been taken up a whole nother level, what you can do with it, as well as how much easier it is to work with. And then the entity builder has a couple of items, one being that, and this has been a very requested feature, it'll play nice with the workflows, but being able to give read access to the entities without a user having to be logged in. So in your workflows or just people who are not signed in, seeing some data that has been created with the entity builder. You have to do some workarounds right now to make that happen. It was all kind of targeted at signed in people. That can be opened up now to everyone at your discretion. There's a new page management feature in the app builder, so no need to manage all of that as an administrator, but very easy to create pages, move them around in the structure. These are pages that are outside of what's created by the entity builder. We've got the ability to manage multiple API endpoints, as well as greater accessibility to the system logs. And then there's several security fixes, lots of little enhancements and bugs and things that have been squashed. So it's going to be a very good release. I just want us, it's so big, I want to make sure we have time to test, upgrade paths, all that kind of stuff really well before rolling it out. But things are going well. I think it's going to be best version of Planton app to date. So that's always the goal. That's it from me. If there's no questions.
Very good. I'll jump in here. We're going to keep this moving along briskly today and leave a lot of time for Radu to tell us stuff. Last week in this segment, I talked about workflow quality assurance, making sure that the workflows you designed continue to work as you designed them, being able to test them and prove them. And since then, I've posted a slightly deeper dive on our low-code feature focus, which is a playlist on our YouTube channel. So here in a little bit, I will post the link to to that as well. But if you wanted to go in and do a little slightly deeper dive on that, and none of these are very long. I think this one's 10 minutes. So beyond that, today we're talking a lot about context, about what's available to you as you're working within your whichever selected product form or grid or the automations. So I thought I would just take an example that might be of value. This is a little bit of a contrived example, but I think that it will demonstrate what's available to you. So the target that I'm shooting for today is we're going to make, we have a entity called books, and we're going to make recommendations. We're going to send an email, one email for all the books. So there's 3 books, you'll see it. And so we'll send one email out that will be a recommendation email. And I'm actually not going to send emails. I'm going to demo that as well, but just to make it easy to see. But then the second step is we'll do separate emails for each book. So there's 3 books, and we'll send out 3 different emails. So let's dive in to see what that looks like. I have a book entity that's created, and actually I've got a book here that's slipped in. I'm going to delete that. That's a test for a support call that I was working on. So we've got 3 books, and from one of my favorite authors, and so the names are Foundation and Empire, Second Foundation. So let's start building. I've got an empty page here that is nothing on it, just set up with the new page builder theme, and I'm going to drop a action form onto the page. And we'll go ahead and manage this form. And I'm going to do it as a blank form. And this is going to be the send recommendations. And I always like to name them, and it's really quite useful, because when we get into, and I'm going to go back to the page, again, we're using the page builder theme. And so when we click the gear down here, we see the customize the send recommendation form. It uses the name that you gave it. So always recommend that you use a good name. I'm going to turn off the advanced settings to get that persona bar out of the way. So we're just seeing the page we're working on. So we'll go ahead and customize this thing. And let's see, all of my, I've got some notes over here, and they're hidden. So I'm going to move things out of the way so I can get to them. So again, the first target is that we are going to send one email for all the books. So we'll have to use a feature to gather all the book names together. And so let's see how we can make that work. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add a button, and the button is going to be send all. And in the actions of the button, I am going to start with a context, and I'm going to initialize some variables. I'm an old school programmer. These are really the tokens, the things that are in your context. So the first one that I'm going to do is a book list. And so this is what we're going to build up, the list of books. And it's going to start out with an empty value. So I'm just going to leave it there. And then the next one is going to be the body of the email. This is the template of the body. And I'm going to say our recommendation is, and that's this could be far more complex, but again, I'm just trying to demonstrate the features. So the next thing we're going to want to do is in our entities, and in our Plant an App section, way down here, there is a thing called Read All Books. So Read All Books is the thing that's going to go out and get all of our books. And when we do this, it's going to create an output token. Now, I'm not going to give it any particular information. This is going to happen only for logged in users, so we don't have to worry about security, but the output is going to be something called books. And so now we're going to follow the recommendation here, the guidance that's in the, what can you do with this output token? Well, we're going to use load entities JSON to load that into an entity that we can loop over. So I'm going to use the search, and we're going to say load entities JSON, and we're going to what we're doing is create the book. I like to document my steps, know what I'm doing here. So the model of this is just as it's shown, the output token name : JSON. That's what's going to get converted into an entity list, and the output of this thing is going to be called book entity. So now we have something that we can loop over, and so that's exactly what we're going to do in our next step. We're going to add an action that is, it's down here in our entities, execute actions on an entity list. So this is the thing that's going to let us loop through that. And so what we're going to do is loop through books, and the entity name that we're looping through is book entity. There's other features we're going to use here. We're not going to use filters in this one. And what do we want to do for each entity that we're looping through? Well, in this case, what we want to do is to build a book list. So we will, I'm going to use the context inject data. That's going to let me create some things. And so this is going to be build the book list. And so it's going to, we're going to use book list as the thing that's going to get created. And what we're using, since book list actually existed up in our initialize, it has an empty value. We're going to use it here as well. So we're saying the book list is the book list from before plus the book entity, this thing that we're looping through, book entity name. And so this is going to build a list of books for us, and it's going to be in book list. And that's all we're doing in our loop. So now we're kind of down to the final steps where we want to put this all together into an email. So I am going to do that by injecting data again, and this is going to be combine the book list and the body. And so we are outputting. We're going to create something called, we're going to replace the body token that already exists with the existing body and the book list. So the body is going to be our recommendation is plus all the books that we've accumulated here a minute ago. So I said we're going to demo an email. I'm actually going to use a toast message to display this. So I'm going to do display a toast message, continue execution. This will display our results. So I'm going to say display the body of the email. This would normally be what we would put into an email output. And just to make it nice and easy to see, I'm going to show it as a nice success or green box and show it for 10 seconds and allow lots of them to be on the screen. And I like them right in the middle and center of the screen. And then finally, because of the way I've set this up, I'm going to do an AJAX to say that we don't want to reload the page. Because normally when you push a button, the page reloads unless you stop it from doing so. So I'm going to save that. And then since I'm using the page builder, I can use this new icon that Reza and the team has provided us, and it'll force it to reload. And so we have a button, send all. We click that, and right in the middle of the screen, we get our recommendation is, and then the 3 books are listed. So we've built up a body from all the book lists and and it has all of our books. So that's part one. So part two says we're going to send an email for each individual recommendation. So let's dig in and do that. So I'm going to go in and edit this and recommendation again. And it's going to be the same thing with a few changes. So I'm going to clone that and say that we're going to call it send individual. And we'll make a few changes to this. So we still need to, we're going to keep the same initialized variables. So we have a book list and a body, and we're still reading books and create an entity, and we're going to loop through them. But instead of just building a book list, we are going to build a body and send it immediately. So let's make those few changes. So we're going to build the body, and the body is going to be the body from above, which is our recommendation is, and then the name of the book. And then we're immediately going to send that. I'm going to use this same toast message in place of an email. So I'm going to export this and copy it and import it back in this, whoops, got to put something in here. In this part of the stack. So we're going to display the same message. We're going to display the same body in the middle of the screen. But since it's in the midst of our execute actions looping through the book entity, it's going to happen 3 times. So we're going to build it, build a body, and then send it. Because we're doing it there at each time, we don't need to do it at the end. So I'm going to remove those and save. Now, I intentionally did something here that is we're going to have to fix. So let's see what it's doing so far. We'll refresh. And so now we have our send individual button. We have 3 emails, but the emails, the first one has the first book. The second one has the first and second book. The third one has the first, second, and third book. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted an individual recommendation. So let's see why that happened. If we go back into the form and look at our send individual button, in this execute entities, the context behavior, we didn't pick one. And when we don't pick one, it defaults to this, which is update all tokens in the original context. That means that as we were doing things down here, the tokens were being updated. So when we built the body, it used the body as it existed, plus added the name. And so each loop through, it added the name to the end. I'm going to change this and use don't save the iteration tokens. And this says it will not keep any tokens generated. It's not going to update the tokens that were already present. So each time it iterates through here, now the body starts over. It starts the way it was before execute actions on the entity list. It starts, which is the value our recommendation is. So this is just to illustrate that it's not going to have a permanent change. The change only exists in the context of this action list. So let's save that and refresh again. And now when we send individual, we get 3 emails, but 1 for every book title. And so I know that was a little bit quick, but that is, this will be available on replay. You can see kind of what the difference is and follow along. And as always, if there are questions about what we got into there, feel free to jump in and put those on our chat or questions. And so very good. And now I invite Radu to jump in, and he's going to talk a lot more about the whole idea of context.
Hey, hello everyone. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about context and different places where we need to get some context about what is it and how it's gonna affect when you are building and how you are building an app. Now, I think the first thing I would like to show you is well, I would like to explain to you what's a context. So imagine, so you know the stand-up, the comedy guys that they are doing improvs. So they ask you, hey, give me a place, okay, in a park, and give me an object, a book. All right, and after that, he starts, I was reading a book, and everything gets funny. So context, when we are talking about context inside Plant and App, is the same thing. It's asking the question, which data am I available to use to manipulate it and achieve something with it. So it's basically which data am I able to access, or I'm available, I need to access, or it's available for me. Now that we know that how we can define context, now let me give you another example. So usually you can see a context also as a steel factory. So the initial context is that you have raw material, you have raw metal, but you have a process where you are smelting it and you are putting it into forms, and after that you achieve whatever you wanted, a fork or whatever. So the context, what I'm trying to say with this is the fact that even you get some variables, some information at the start of the context, you may generate during the execution of some actions or some workflows, you can generate new variables, new tokens inside the context that you can use in a further in the next action and so on. So usually usually context, and I can go now and move on my book entity page. So usually context, when we are saying context, and let me explain it on the form, it's we have those things that you may see in all of our products, this group of add action and import actions, and you're seeing them in different places. You either can see them when you click buttons and you have this set of things, or in the form events of an action, and we're going to explain a little bit those later in this video. The idea is that we call those, at least inside internally, we call those things action lists. Well, because you have lists of actions, so it's that simple. Now, each individual action list it has a context. So the so this one doesn't interact with the one above, and so on. So each individual set of actions that are executed, have their own context. So let's take the button, a form button. Yeah, okay. So what information I can manipulate when I click, let's say, the add button. So if I go here, I see the fact that I'm having tokens or variables that are a reference to the field. So I can deduct that all the fields that I have in the form are available for me in this context, are available for me to use and manipulate the information based on. The same thing happens on the page load and a PreInit, but it depends. It really depends. It depends on the initial context every time, because on the on-page load, if you read the description, it's saying you are not even on the page. The form is not even loading yet, so you don't have access to any fields at that point. So what do you have access then to? Well, you have access to all of the tokens inside the configuration. Everything here is going to work anywhere. You can envision it as a global context. Everything is available at any point in any action. When I say it's available, some of them might not work in some situation. There might be situation you don't have a URL or you don't have a user in the context, but those are like more specific situation, more niche situation. So I'm not gonna go too much in detail about those. But the idea is that to keep it simple, imagine that each set of action its own context when we are talking about tokens that are generated inside what's an input to manipulate, and also you can generate new tokens via like inject data to create new tokens and when executing a set of actions. Now that hopefully we have the basis, we can move to what I like to say is a user context. Or no, before we do that, let me go to configuration and explain something. Give you some more examples. So for example, those are the APIs, all right? So the APIs, themselves, what's their context. So when is those add action, import actions are gonna run? Well, the input parameters are their context. They are gonna manipulate whatever you give them in the input parameters, also whatever you grab data from through the tokens from here. Now, automation, the same thing. Which are the data that you can manipulate inside jobs? In this case, it depends on the trigger. Do I have a database trigger? Well, in this situation, and the help desk helps me here, it says, well, I'm going to get all the column names of the new entry into the database, into the entity, as a token. So that's my context. I can manipulate that information and also manipulate all the tokens from my tokens. And this goes to the other components as well. Let's move now to the user context. So the user context, as you can see here, so I can grab a little bit more information about who I am and what access do I have and other stuff like that. The whole idea is that all the informations that you are seeing here, and let me show you the configuration behind, are grabbed through the tokens that we have here, and more exactly, we are getting information through this user. So who is the logged in user? Oh, come on, help me here. What's happening? Right here. Am I? Come on. All right, give me a second. I'm not sure what's happening, but give me a second to fix this really quickly. All right, let me see if I...
While you're looking at that, I'll just mention we've had a question or two and one user that's raised their hand. So if you're still interested in asking a question, if you would just pop it in on the chat. If you're otherwise, yeah, good. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so all right, so let's see what I use for this information. So the idea is, so I had used two tokens. So we have the user and username, the email and the user ID, and those are tokens that can be described here. So you can use email and the values are described here. Also, interesting things about the users are like, what are the roles that the user is in? And we have this token user role. So this is grabbing my information from the global context. I have access to me as a user logged in into the system wherever I need to. Also, we have a very important token, the has role one, which you can specify an individual token, the individual role, and it's gonna return true or false depending if you have or you don't have the role. So in my situation, I'm an admin and I'm a user as well, and I'm a super user, and the super user has all the roles. In any case, what I wanted to show you is that I could use those tokens to initialize the form, to show them in a form in a basic static text, showing them here. But they're also available when I'm going to push the button, and the button itself, it's only showing a message with everything that I just showed. It's showing in the form. So the idea is that all those tokens can be used in conditions, like here. They can be used in different actions, or anywhere you need those. You can make a button show or hide depending if the user is an admin or is or not. So those are the usages of the user tokens, the user context.
So there's many things that get provided automatically that, like user, that you don't have to do anything to acquire. You just have to know that they're there and be able to grab them and use them.
Yep. Do you want to send the user an email? Well, you have it here. You don't have to know who the user is. So if you want to send the user that is using the application, you want to receive it a mail when they click a button, you use this token as the setting in the send email action. All right. Now, let's move really quickly to the form context. A lot of people are struggling with understanding what are the form events that, the on-page load, PreInit, and Init. I'm going to try to explain those now. So the first the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the on-page load, and I'm going to be redirected to the home page, and I'm going to click it again, and I'm going to be redirected to the home page. And that's because each time I'm accessing that page, I have a form that is redirecting me to the home page. And the trick here is that I'm not even landing on that page. I'm not accessing that page in any way because I'm not having, the condition is not met. And in this case, the condition is to have stop in the query string, as I have here. Each time I'm trying to access this page, this form is going to say, you need to go to the home page. And let's see how I configure it. And those are situations maybe you want to redirect user based on some roles or based on something that they did in your application. And you can come here on the on-page load, and you can decide that. In my case, my stop condition was to have this query string, and otherwise I'm going to be redirected to the home page. One mention that I have: be sure your condition works, otherwise you may get locked out of the page because you are going to get redirected every time to the home page if you don't have a condition. So be careful with this. One recommendation is maybe to have something like has role admins. So admins, so just like that. If you're an admin, you're not gonna get redirected, so you don't get in an infinite cycle. So you can either have the query string or you can be an admin.
That is a good point, that you can do things that can get yourself into trouble with redirecting. So.
Power to the developers. Okay. So that's how on the page load. So keep in mind, this is, you're not even touching this page. You're not loading anything. If you have JavaScript, if you have anything on the page, entities, triggers or API calls or anything else, you're not going to get them. This is happening before anything else on the page. All right. Now let's move on to the PreInit. So here I have, again, it's a basic form. I just have a first name and a last name. But what I want to show you here is, whoops. The idea is that, yes, you can have, so the idea is that you can use context tokens to initialize your fields. Like, I want the first name to be first name. I want the last name to be the user last name. So when when they're gonna go and complete a form, there is gonna be pre-filled. But now, what if, and this is what if your form needs to have like some agreements or some steps that they need to be so you need to be this age and you need to live in this place or this area and something like that, but you're not in control of those information. They come from legal, or they come from the someone who makes the rules. So how do you initialize a field like I did here with the informations from another source? So the idea of the PreInit is the PreInit is able to update fields to set up initial values to the fields that you have, but not based on a token, but based on a set of actions. So in my case, I'm just pulling random lore ipsum from an API that I get, that can be your legal system or some people that are writing the legal stuff. And after that, I'm just getting the JSON, parsing the JSON into tokens, and injecting my text that I want to show in the form in the info step. And how this works is that info step here, if I'm gonna name a variable, a token, if I'm gonna name it in the PreInit side exactly as a field, I'm gonna give that field the value. So That's why the pre-init value is useful if you need to initialize a field, but it's really complicated to initialize. It needs a complex logic, maybe in a workflow, and you don't want to put that in a token. Maybe you want to use that workflow directly, so you can do this. You can use the pre-init section. Keep in mind that the tokens, that if there are any tokens generated in the page load, they are not accessible for you here. So this is a different context. It's a different stage of initializing this form. And I know it's maybe complicated, but it's really, really useful. Now let's move on the Init side of on the section of the form events. Now, if I go to Init here.
Built another example.
Yeah, I'm not sure why my names are empty. I think it has something to do with, give me a second. I think it has something to do with my issue with my roles and the form's not showing up. So give me a second to see. Let me open this really quickly and duplicate access denied. What? Oops. I think I messed something up. Oops, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong and I'm not sure what. Give me 1 second, please. All right, so I should be able to see this now. And let me duplicate this really quickly while I'm removing myself a role. Not sure what's happening. Come on, help me here. All right, let's see now. All right, so now that I have this open here, I can show you and how I plan the demo. So the idea is that I'm having the first name and the last name here initialized with my, opposite last name here and first name here anyway. But what I'm trying to do is I'm computing my display name. I'm adding the value from the first name and add the value from the last name together here. And I'm doing this on the pre-init. And how I'm doing this? Well, the trick here is that on the Init side, you have access to whatever values or whatever initial values the fields got already. So in this situation, I'm creating my display name by adding first name and last name, but not the user first name and the user last name. That the information that I got from the global context, I'm using the already initialized fields values from the first name and last name, and exactly the same as I did for the same rule that it's happening on the pre-init. If you name tokens, if you name the outer variable, you name the token exactly as a field and as an existing field, you are gonna get the value there. And I'm also showing you a display show toast message, which is putting the first name and last name together. So when I'm refreshing this page here, I'm gonna get those two together, but I'm not accessing the global context anywhere. I'm using the initial the values that those were initialized with.
Right, and if you show the help text above on init, it describes it. It says that all the variables will have values based on their initialization, so you're able to use them.
Yeah, the help texts are really useful, but I saw in time that there were people struggling understanding how those things you're using. So if I can simplify this you use if you want to have something happen before the user even touches the page. This you use to initialize your fields if you have complex initialization logic. And this you use if you need to manipulate the already initialized fields. Something like this in a more simplified way. And the validation, well, the validation itself is if something fails the validation, you are gonna you can execute. So if you want to see how many times someone is failing to complete your form, you can count here.
Very good.
Right. So those are the form contexts. Now I want to show you. I named them app context, but the trick is here. I want to show you how you can use cookies and sessions, because those are ways to set up in the global context your own value. So if a user moves to page, it can move a value with him through all the pages. You can either put it in a cookie or put it in a session token.
And this is great that you're moving on to this, because we do have a question from Jim asking exactly that, like a customer ID to be able to move it. Do you store it in session? Do you store it in a cookie? What's the best answer? So I'm sure you're going to hit that as you work.
See, did I stop? No. Okay. Oops. Oh, okay. So yeah. Yeah, let me show you, and I'm gonna so let me show you how it works, and we can discuss at after this section which is the best option, because it depends a little bit on the use case that you have. So moving up to cookies, I already have one here. It seems. So if I go into the settings, you know what, before I do this, let me use this add-on for Chrome. It's called edit this cookie. So here it's really useful. I can just go and delete my cookie, the cookie that I just created, and let me refresh the page really quickly. Okay, cool. Now how the cookies work. So the cookies, we can search them here. The cookies themselves are very simple. So you can have a limited, it is not that big. So keep in mind, it's not that big. I'm not really sure. I don't really know the limit, but it's not that huge. So not recommended for really storing huge amounts of data. But you basically put a key value pair. So you put a name and a value for something, and the browser is going to keep it through all the pages while you are on this domain. So this is really important. It's not going to move to Google or anything. So any values that you set here are not going to be tracked by any a search engine or any other site. All right, so the cookies themselves are, you use the cookie and the key to retrieve it, and you usually use where is it, well, this one to set it up. And if you want to have like an expiration date for it, you can use that also. So that's the trick actually here to answer the above question. So the difference between sessions and cookies is the fact that a cookie expires whenever you want. A session expires when the user logs out, or it's got logged out because of inactivity of, I don't know, 30 minutes or something like that. So that's the difference. If you want to set a value for the user to be 10 years with a cookie, if the user doesn't, delete the cookie from the browser, or switches PCs or something, that value is going to be stuck with him, but it's going to be in a way on his side. He's going to be stored in his browser, while a session is storing on the server, but it's only lasting while the user is connected to the logged into the system. And funny enough, that's based also on other cookies, but that's the main difference. You have examples here how to use more complex or expiration dates, and keep in mind, if you use the same name when you are setting a cookie, you're basically overwriting the existing cookie. So that's the trick here. What I did here is I'm having a text box, and I'm having the initial value to be my cookie. So I'm creating my cookie. That's a terrible name now that I think about it. And on the button itself, I'm using the execute token action, and I'm saying I want to create a new cookie called my cookie, and the value should be the text box. So this is, again, coming back a little bit, but this is this is the context of this button is the fields that I have in my form, in this case my cookie, and also the global tokens, the tokens, again, the tokens that we have here, all the tokens in the core tokens. You put the expression, the token that you want to also put, even though this cookie doesn't return anything, please put an output token name, otherwise it's not gonna work and it's not gonna tell you pleasantly. And yeah, just put something. It doesn't need to be something useful, just put something there, and this is gonna set a new cookie for you. So now if I go and say, hey, I'm gonna say set cookie, the page is gonna refresh and the initial value is gonna be the cookie that I just set, and I can check with my Chrome add-on that, hey, I have a cookie and it's host only, so it's gonna work only on this domain. It's gonna work only on HTTPS, and it doesn't. So this date means that it's basically not gonna expire. So it's as much as it's gonna be stick with here until the user loses it, deletes it, or you don't take account of it anymore, or you decide to delete it when he comes back on your website.
Radu, this is the most amount of questions we've received on one topic. You've hit a nerve here. We've got one question about whether it says, I read that one of the browsers is planning on restricting cookies in the near future. Can you comment, is it safe to count on cookies?
Yes. So to answer the first question, some browsers are planning to restrict cookies. Yes, there are. It's actually Chrome already did it. So it's blocking the third-party cookies, and the third-party cookies are the cookies that move from domain to domain, and they're basically using like Google to track you from page to page. And I can give you an example of those. If you see here, because I'm a subdomain of the main domain, plantenapp.com, I'm still having the cookies from the Google Analytics, and if I also had Google Analytics on this instance, it's gonna do something like this. Hey, I checked that this I checked that this ID, for example, I saw you in plantenapp.com, and after 3 seconds, I'm seeing you on appdev LCC 30 apps.plantenapp.com. So that means that you moved from plantenapp.com to this website. So that's how they are tracking you. And the difference here is that we are using host-only cookies that are only available in this one, while Google itself, through the Planten app, is not putting host-only tokens, so it can track you. So those are the cookies that are not gonna live anymore in incognito anymore. If you check this one, those tokens do not move. Only host-only cookies are available for you.
And individual browsers can choose to block cookies. So if you design something for end users that don't that are not within your control, like they're not within your company, they could choose to block cookies, and your application wouldn't work, right? So it's because it's browser based, you can't 100% rely on them. Versus if you have a scenario where people you're designing a website for a corporate use, and you can say, yeah, you've got to have cookies on to use this website. It's a feature you can use, but in terms of blindly, you're going to get different responses from different browsers and individual user settings, right?
Yeah. It may happen. It's very rare, but it may happen. So that's the blocking the third-party cookies that we're talking. And if it's safe to use cookies, yes, it is safe. If the user doesn't use, hacked browsers or whatever strange. So how can I say it? It's not, I think it's not your problem if the user is using an infected machine or an old browser that is not securely patched anymore, or they can stall cookies. But that's not your fault. It's the end user fault, because it's using wrong wrong software, to not secure software enough. So most likely, if they get those information, they're gonna leak their information, not the whole application information. So keep your browser updated, but they're doing that for you every time. So the Chrome is updating behind the scenes. Firefox is updating once in a while. Edge browser, Safari also, they update with the software, with the OS. So if you are using those main browser, you should be safe.
And then you've also pointed out that there are add-ons where you can look at and manipulate cookies. So it's probably not a safe place to put, for example, a password in the clear.
Oh.
The users can see it and or change their context to something that you don't intend for them. Like if you put a security role in a cookie and they could manually wanted to hack you, they could change your cookie. So it's right. It's good for remembering people and certain non-secure information, but safe is.
Yeah, something like I click this button, but we are going to move through a flow of 3 pages, and you want to be sure that what's the source, basically what button they got them here from your website to the other page. And when they finish the process, okay, so they came from this button. It's like storing some simple information, not passwords exactly. Usually you give them their password, not other user passwords. So if they leak in or they have defective add-ons, then too bad for them. But just keep it for tracking the user a little bit from your website or making simple logic. If you came from the main page, you don't need to see the banners anymore on all other pages because you get the idea or stuff like that.
So questions keep coming.
All right. If you use only domain, wait, can you help me here, Del?
Yeah, if you use only domain or host cookies, you still need to get user permission to store it. In other words, can the user block?
Yes. Yes. Kind of, yes. It's a legal thing and it's a funny thing. Are you tracking the user? Then you need to get his consent, at least if you're from Europe and you have the GDPR thing. You need to get the consent. Do you consider that cookie necessary? Then you can put it. Do you anonymize? When you do the tracking of the user, do you store personal information about the user? Then you need their accept. Are you storing anonymous data, like how many user, but you don't know which user is which? Then you can consider it necessary and you can use it from that on. For example, let's see, I think DNN has DNN is mobile, so false. So this is a cookie that DNN already put for me in the system. It doesn't track me. It doesn't have personal information. It's a necessary cookie. Sessions or other information. For me, if my cookie is gonna hide a banner or something like that, and I'm not tracking the user in a way that he's not informed of, well, then you can use it. So it's a more legal thing.
And perhaps the bigger answer for us is we provide the ability to use cookies, but there's whatever the legal behind that is something that you're going to need to pay attention to. And how, the feature of cookie exists and you might need to do a little bit of research, but we provide you the access to use them in the right circumstances.
Yeah. For example, if you visit plantandapp.com, you're going to see, so if let's say if you're in an incognito, so we not tracking you, but we are using Google Analytics, but we are anonymizing the IP, so we don't know who you are, from where you are. We just know that how many users there are. And when you click "Got it," you are gonna see here. So I'm having just Google Analytics and the DNN required. But if you click "Got it," and I'm gonna click here again, that's when we put the tracking cookies for other software, for other services here. So we're not tracking until you give us the accept. So that's a way how you should implement the cookies. You only set up cookies if the user gets you access. It is what it is. I don't know.
Great. Let's jump away from cookies for a minute to question. If you create a token, this is back to form load. If you create a token in Init, will it survive the load init phase to be used later in a form action?
If you create a token in Init, it will survive. Okay, if you create a token in Init, will it survive the load init phase?
And I think the answer is no. When you do things within those steps, they don't continue to exist unless you make specific provision for it.
If you want something to survive from PreInit to Init, or from Init to a button or submission, you have to put it in a field. It's gonna be either a visible field, or you can use the hidden field with custom value. So you can use this as a, my value, and you have access to this field when the button is pushed, if you are pushing the value into it from PreInit or onInit, or even the initial value itself, like I don't know, user.email or something. So this is gonna be a value. So user email, and when you submit the button, when you submit and push a button, my user email is gonna have the user email value into it.
So unless you take special steps, it's not going to be available.
Yeah,
if you need it to be available, put it on the form.
Put it in a field form, and the hidden field is exactly why this was designed for, to be able to store information, not showing to the user and so on.
So right. We're kind of at 2 minutes. If there's anything that you wanted to make sure that you hit today, and maybe quickly talking about workflow and the fact that it's such a limited context is a great one, and then we can wrap.
Yeah. So the session, same thing. Same thing. You can set the session. You set the session. This is gonna be available until you log out. You can get information about here in the tokens. You can have you can search sessions. This is how you get a session. This is how you set a session. Now, workflows, yes, workflow context. Really quickly here, so I have a list of books that I showed you earlier, and I built a very simple way to rename them. So you choose a book, you enter a new name, and I have two options to rename. There are two workflows. It's rename 1 and rename 2. Going to workflows, I'm going to show you really quickly how they look. So rename 1, the trick here is that it's getting the book that I want to rename, and I'm using a partial update of the book, and I'm grabbing from my book object, from my book entry, I'm getting the ID, and I'm using the new value, the new name, to update the name of the book. So here, where is I? Here, you can see I have a field which is called new name. So I'm using
coming in from the context of the form is available.
No, that's basically what I want to show the people. So any fields, for example, from the form that you do not pass directly. So this is my first example. So this, you only send the book, and here you are send the same thing. You are sending the book and also the new name. Keep in mind this workflow here doesn't know anything about your field here if you don't pass it directly. So what's happening if I choose like Metro, whatever name of the book is, and I'm choosing rename 1, which I'm not sending the new name to the workflow. If I refresh the page, the result is gonna be that it's gonna be the token because I didn't send it. Now, if I choose the same book and put the correct name here, Metro 2003, and I choose rename 2, now because I'm sending the new, so that's the only. If I'm sending the new name, I can actually rename the. I'm actually renaming properly the book. So the idea is that the isolated context of the workflow is, if you want to simplify it in a way, it's basically whatever you send to it, that's what it's working with. It's not, if the form has the fields as their initial context, the workflow has whatever you send as the input parameters, as their tokens that they can use. And the same as any other module, like the form, the grid, the API, and everything like that, it has access to the global context. So it knows the user that pushed the button and triggered the workflow in a way that if I want to send an email, I can use the token user, email. I don't need to column, sorry. I don't need to pass it as an input parameter because this is happening in the global
It doesn't know
context.
anything about your form or anything else, and it only knows what you pass it in, which is a really nice concept in terms of building a workflow. You can guarantee that it has, it's kind of a clean slate, and then it has access to what you pass in, and it sends out what you pass back.
Yep. And it doesn't know if it triggered it from a form or an API or an automation, or it doesn't know anything. It only knows what you input it, and the only thing that he's doing, manipulating the data, doing his job, and outputting this. Is not outputting. So anything that's gonna be created inside the workflow, any tokens that are generating in the process, don't matter. Matter only if you output them. So that's what an isolated context means. So you only get the input to work with, and you only the input and the global context of the tokens, and you get out only the output. Hopefully, I put some context into this topic. And with this terrible pun, I'm out.
All right. Well, I think we're down to happy low coding. Bogdan, are you there to close us out?
Yes, yes, of course. Cool. So very, very good webinar. There's also some very good documentation. I'm not sure if Dale or Radu, you got to post the link. There's good documentation on understanding the context better. You can find this on learn.plantanet.com. And I think there's also some older documentation about the form lifecycle. I saw some questions regarding this, the various events and what information exists at each stage and what information gets passed from one stage to another. So again, that's information. I think it's in the old documentation, but probably you'll find it if you search on Google. So again, thank you all for being here again. Some of you have been here for all 30 episodes. Some of you are new, and I'm hoping to see all of you next week, and new faces as well. So thanks again for being here, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.